The Padang was gazetted Singapore's 75th national monument on National Day in August of last year. In addition to guidelines for preserving the site, the National Heritage Board will carry out further research. It will look into potential implications on the site and the surrounding developments. Now, this will help guide the decision at a later stage on whether Singapore will formally pursue the UNESCO nomination.
Sherry Locke tells us why this open green space at the heart of the civic district is so very significant.
An empty field onto which history has inscribed meaning. Time has taken the Padang from the hearts of colonial power through the devastation brought on by racial riots.
They went on a rampage all down the whole of the Padang area.
And finally, to the heights of independence.
In 1959, Yusof Ishak ascended these steps to be sworn in as Singapore's first Malayan-born head of state, after the country achieved full internal self-governance. During the historic ceremony, the state flag was also unfurled for the first time, and the 10,000-strong crowd joined in singing the new national anthem.
Very good. The first time that a nation free from colonialism and have an anthem and a flag.
In 1966, thousands flocked here to celebrate Singapore's first National Day parade. And in the years after that, numerous parades would also return, whether rain or shine. It's a proud story made even richer with the protected physical space, and the fact that it's a space, not a building, could signal an important shift.
The way in which we can think about history is not just through a kind of constellation of scattershot buildings. So if we preserve, let's say, this building, we preserve the arts house and so on, without the Padang as kind of the central focal point, we are actually not preserving the kind of connections, the memory of connections and encounters that were made that connects these spaces together and tells us not only about the colonial past, but also how Singapore developed post-1965.
But preservation doesn't mean that no one will be able to enjoy the space.
The Padang being gazetted for posterity, we also want to ensure that the space continues to be used in all the normal functions that we see it used today. So whether for sports, recreation, national events, public festivals.
After all, as most would agree, the best way to honour the Padang's legacy isn't to freeze it in time, but to leave it open for future generations to carve their stories into its soil.
For more on the addition of the Padang and its surrounding buildings to Singapore's tentative list for UNESCO World Heritage Sites, we have with us in the studio Dr. Johannes Widodo. He's from the NUS School of Architecture.
He's also a jury member for UNESCO Asia Pacific Awards for Cultural Heritage Conservation and a member of the International Council on Monuments and Sites. Dr. Widodo, very quickly, do you think the Padang Civic Ensemble, where will it score? Where will it fall short?
Well, for me, I think Padang is one of the most important spots in Singapore, not just for Singapore, but also for the regions and also in terms of international relationships. It has been there since 14th century at least as a marketplace. And then the layer of history of that place is so thick, even until now and even to the future. So for me, I think the listing of Padang is very much very important, not just for Singapore, but also have some meaning for the world as well.
Let's look a little bit more closely at that, because to be included on the World Heritage List, sites have to be of outstanding universal value.
Yes.
This is from UNESCO, and they have to meet at least 1 out of 10
yes.
Selection criteria. Tell us something about how rigorous that selection criteria is.
Well, but first, among this 10, it's not just 1, but probably, I think, potentially, Padang can have another 2. The second criteria that is normally used for place is equally important because it's also telling the story about the historical timeline and also the cultural layerings and historical layerings. The fourth criteria that is being used now in the tentative nomination is focusing more on buildings and place and site, while criterion number 6 This is also equally important because it's a continuous use of that space. It's a living heritage, living cultural landscape.
Right.
So I think the most important thing in determining the OU fee is very rigorous research and also to find evidence that this is really outstanding universal value that is uniquely belong to Singapore, but not just Singapore, but also have a meaning for the world community. And because the reason is because UNESCO mandate is to create world peace through educations, cultural exchange, and scientific pursuit. So therefore, Padang is like a book, like a textbook that need to be published
Right,
to
like
the world.
like a living
Yes.
textbook.
Was the, sorry.
Karen, no, Karen, please.
But was the flip side to that National Heritage Board, apart from, as you say, making the point that this is a unique place with universal value, they also have to justify, substantiate that they will be able to, generation upon generation, manage, look after this site so that this site of value will be properly protected?
Yes. So first is justify this is beyond the colonial narratives. This is beyond British. This is related to the Singapore past, the link with the cosmopolitan Southeast Asia and the world, and the present links for the nation-building effort, and also the Singapore as part of the world community. So second is to ensure that this OU fee will be protected into perpetuity, 100, 1,000 years later for the next generations. And therefore, heritage management plan, heritage impact assessment, all these instruments should be put in place so the committee is satisfied that Singapore can be trusted as a country that is able to manage this for the next generations, not just for Singaporeans, but also for the citizens of the world.
So the management of it is going to be critical here, but we were talking earlier and you mentioned that it may take quite some time before all of this comes to pass. There is a rigorous process. So what's that process like?
Well, the first step is, of course, is the statement of intent. And then second is starting the so-called rigorous studies and also public engagement and trying to justify and find evidence. And once we are ready, there will be a series of helps actually by e-commerce international, for example, or even from the UNESCO World Heritage itself, to make sure that the dossier is robust. So there will be an upstream missions, there will be a desk review, just like doing a PhD dissertations. And once you are considered as ready, then you can submit this to the conventions.
Right.
And equal to PhD studies, it can take 2 years, it can take 5 years, or even more than that, and it can fail as well.
So you might fulfill, more than one of the 10 criteria, but you also have to be able to back
Yes,
each one
that
of
is the
those up.
hypothesis.
Right.
You can start with 3 research questions, but you need to justify which one is the best one, or whether there is a combination of 2 or 3. And this is something that I think the next step, the very important step that we need to take as a nation.
Oh, earlier in the bulletin, we heard the comparison with other UNESCO World Heritage Sites, so the Great Wall of China or the Taj Mahal. Of course, that makes, for someone like us, we are familiar with the Padang.
Well,
How can it possibly compare?
You have to
with
compare
sites
apple
like
to apple. I mean, we are talking about a civic place, public space. So you need to compare with other public space, for example, like Maidan in Parsis, or alun-alun in Indonesia, or Esplanade, which is all over the world. And which one actually has a status as World Heritage? And we try to compare with them. Are we different from them? What is our significance? What is our specialities? So we can add into the learning point to the world, that we can contribute to the knowledge of mankind.
If we do, if let's say the Padang and the surrounding areas are actually nominated, and if they were to actually attain World Heritage status, what would it mean for the area? How changed would it become? I mean, it is, as you said, still a space that we use.
Yes, it's a living heritage. Therefore, like conservation is not freezing Padang, not freezing the object, but it's management of change. How we manage change so the property will stay intact. It means the integrity, the authenticity, and the meaning will be able to be perceived and not dissolved. And that is the importance of conservation management plan and all those instruments.
Right, there's some way to go before
Yes.
And thanks for explaining that to us. We were taking a great deal for granted. Dr. Johannes Widodo from the NUS School of Architecture. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much for joining us.
Thank you.